Dr. Bill Harris has a Bachelor of Science degree in chemistry from Hanover College in Hanover, Indiana, and a PhD in nutritional biochemistry from the University of Minnesota. He was the developer of the Omega-3 Index, a new blood test to assess cardiovascular risk, for which he has gained international standing.
We have an obligation, we think, to teach origin science in the most neutral way possible, without religious bias, without naturalistic or philosophical bias. And that way we do the best science and we end up neutral with respect to the Constitution. In order to accomplish that, we require that all the data that's relevant, the scientific data that's relevant to the issues of chemical evolution and macroevolution, be put on the table. That the presentation of one side of that controversy, data supporting one side of that controversy, without the presentation of data that's contradictory to that hypothesis, is not scientifically acceptable and also biases the discussion. So in a word, our hope is that at the end of these hearings, we will be allowed to teach the controversy that does exist over origins. The strategy of our opponents has been to mischaracterize our position and actually to malign some of us who are presenting that position. They have consistently and remarkably, in my mind, refused to engage in a discussion of the scientific substance of the issue. Our opposition has chosen to fight this battle with name-calling. This is a posting on the Kansas Citizens for Science website, dated February 10th, 2005, was written by Liz Craig, who is a member of that organization and involved with some of the public relations. My strategy at this point is the same as it was in 1999. Notify national and local media about what's going on and portray them in the harshest light possible as political opportunists, evangelical activists, ignoramuses, breakers of rules, unprincipled bullies, etc. There may be no way to head off another science standards debacle, but we can sure make them look like asses as they do what they do. Our target is the moderates who are not that well educated about the issues, not that well educated. We're talking about education here. Most of whom probably are theistic evolutionists. There's no way to convert the creationists. The methods of natural investigation, they don't invoke spiritual forces to account for what they observe in the world. They look for natural causes. And I think that's fine to look for natural causes. But when you don't find any natural causes, it's time to fess up and say we don't know. Instead of saying, well, there was a natural cause, we don't know what it was, but we have faith that that's what happened. So methodological naturalism really puts blinders, I think, on the search for truth, particularly in the area of origin science.
Why in the area of origin science?
Because that's a historical science. It doesn't get much more historical than billions of years ago. Nobody was there to know what happened. Nobody watched it. We cannot say with any surety how anything came to be. Every experiment, particularly in the origin of life field, where they've attempted to use, quote, natural environments to produce even some of the simplest chemicals of life, have consistently failed. Since 1950s, they have failed and failed and failed and failed, and yet they are still in the textbooks presented as the plausible explanation for how life arose. But those experiments have failed. It's dishonest, in my view, to portray failures in the laboratory as successes in a textbook. The tremendous amount of data in scientific literature, particularly in biochemistry, but also in cosmology and many other places, that points, that has identified, I think, certainly since 1953, when DNA was, the code was cracked by Watson and Crick. What Watson and Crick discovered was a code. They discovered a code. Every other code in the world that we know of came from a mind. To conclude that DNA at some level somewhere originally came from a mind is not an irresponsible deduction from the data. When we look at some of the biochemical machines that are in cells, and some of our witnesses will attest to this, and maybe even show some pictures. And now that we understand how some of these fantastically complex machines that work inside the simplest cells We can see them now. We understand them now. The advance in modern molecular biology has shown us a world that can only be explained, in my view, by positing some kind of a plan in a direction. I don't know who did it. I don't know how it was done. I don't know why it was done. I don't have to know any of that stuff to detect design. If I walked into my garage today and I found a 6-foot bacterial flagellum laying there and spinning at 100,000 RPM, I would have no idea what it was, besides maybe my weed whacker gone nuts. But I would have no question in my mind that it was a designed object. I would just not know what it was. But you can infer design just by examining something without knowing anything about where it came from.
Why do many mainstream scientists, evolutionists, if you will, refuse to accept the idea that DNA is a code?
Oh, no, I don't think anybody refuses. I just don't think they think about it very deeply.
Okay.
I mean, everybody knows it's a code. I just, in my opinion, they haven't sat down and taken a deep breath and said, where did that come from? And really think about the fact that the bonds along the backbone of the nucleic acid are sugar phosphate bonds. Every bond is identical. There's nothing chemically that's different between the bond between an adenine and a glycine, or a guanine nucleotide containing nucleosides. So the fact that they form this chain is kind of like letters on a page. The letters don't have to be in that sequence. When they are in that sequence, they communicate information, but they don't have to be that way. In the same way in DNA, the letters don't have to be